estate planning is not about you. Ultimately, it's about the loved ones you leave behind and ensuring that they're not left with a mess on their hands, but and a financial burden. The unexpected is right around the corner. You don't know what or when something's going to happen to you. And so take action now before it's too late.
Hello, we're here with Nicholas Silvas, at least second generation attorney. Tell us a bit about yourself and why you do what you do.
Yeah, so as you said, my name is Nicholas Silvas. I'm a second generation attorney. I practice estate planning law. So that's, wills, trusts, business entities, business formations, probate, real estate, and all those kind of related areas as well. And I do what I do. I always tell clients that when they ask is I do what I do because I care about families. My family is incredibly important to me. And I like my job because I get to keep families together, keep them out of conflict, and reduce that fighting as much as possible. Obviously, nothing's foolproof, but that is why I like my job, because I get to keep families together, out of court, out of conflict.
Tell us how you do that, since you started with keeping families together.
Yeah. So a lot of conflicts we see it, and this is just a kind of a general experience. When someone passes away, there's oftentimes a lot of fighting and bickering that goes on over the inheritance. Right? I want this, I want that. You shouldn't get that. You shouldn't get this. Right? And so that the fighting is exponentially increased when there's no proper estate plan in place. When things aren't done correctly, nothing's buttoned up, when there's no documentation saying what the deceased would have wanted. And that's my job. My job is to talk with them and say, and kind of ferret out any potential conflicts that might arise between family members after they pass, and then to address those beforehand in a comprehensive estate planning document and through actually meeting with those people involved. So again, trying to iron everything out beforehand. And again, nothing's ever foolproof, but we can certainly reduce that to a great extent.
A lot of that has to do with the communication, not only of having the plan in place, but then communicating, maybe not the numbers, but communicating the intentions to all family members involved as well.
Yes.
So typically, when do people come to see y'all?
Yeah. So people come to see us generally when they're, 50s, 60s, 70s, or when they're getting ready for retirement or have hit retirement. And so, then they're kind of at the point in life, like, okay, I'm through working or wrapping it up, and now I need to plan, what's going to happen after I'm gone. You start really thinking about that next step at that point. And so that's most of my clients come and see me. And so most of their kids are adults. Most of the time it's not too bad, but sometimes there is problems, especially with blended families. That's a big one. And I always tell clients, if you have a blended family, you need to come in and see an estate planning attorney, because people disagreements, animosity that has been just kind of buried there, oftentimes comes out in the woodworks when someone passes away, especially when you have, your new spouse who's not my parent. So I don't want him or her getting anything. Right. And so that can often cause a lot of disagreement again after someone passes away.
With that in mind, ideally, when would you like people to come and see you?
Yeah. So I tell clients that everyone needs an estate plan. Everyone does, to a greater or lesser extent. As soon as you turn 18, your parents can no longer make, medical, financial decisions for you anymore. You have an estate. An estate is just, things you own. So as soon as you own really anything, you have an estate. You have something that needs to be addressed. Right? And you can do that with a simple will. We can address those other issues with powers of attorney. And so really any adult needs an estate plan. And additionally, like anytime you get married, these big life events, you get married, you have a kid, you get divorced, you retire, any of these big life milestones that happen, you need to come in and, at least if you have a plan in place, review it. And if you don't have a plan in place, get one, because if things can get messy, things can, as I said earlier, problems can arise that potentially you might not have seen or thought about, again, especially in that blended family situation.
We at Checky Financial have actually started to address this. JJ, why don't you outline what we're doing right this moment?
Definitely. We are communicating with all our existing clients and asking them, one, if they have a will or estate plan in place, and if they know, one, if it's up to date, and two, where the original is located, because we've run into that within our own practice when we had parents that were clients. They pass away. No conflict amongst the two sons, but they couldn't locate the original will. So the delay that caused an added expense. And then within my own family, a 20-year-old will that had some language that wasn't completely clear, and the challenges that we faced within our own family as a result. So we're contacting our clients and walking through where are you in the process and helping them get connected with the right professionals if they don't have one in place, or making sure that they review what they do have.
Why don't you outline for everyone out there what on earth the medical directive is?
Yeah, so there are two very similar documents. There's the medical power of attorney and then the directive to physicians. That is often called a living will. So the living will, I don't like that name because it combines two totally unrelated documents. You've got your will and your living trust, and they have nothing to do with what this document does. That's, again, the directive to physicians. What that document does is it just tells the doctor if and when you want life support removed. And you make that decision yourself. It takes it out of the hand of your family members or even your medical power of attorney, who you appoint in that medical power of attorney document, who would make all other medical decisions for you. Again, you're taking with the directive to physicians, you're saying you're not going to make that decision. I'm making it in this document. And so that's the difference between those two documents and kind of what they are, because they're often confused.
We run into that in our practice. And originally we thought we had all the documents, and son of a Brussels sprout, someone got remarried and they forgot to have a medical directive. And the wife who's been wife for a number of years and no conflicts, as the other wife was no longer in play because she had been deceased for some time. So got a call saying, the doctors aren't really talking to me. And I said, excuse me? He said, well, they are asking me if I have and again, tell us the exact name of what she should have had in advance. She now has that.
Yeah, it should be in Texas anyway, it's called a medical power of attorney.
Okay, medical POA. And after someone dies, does that have any directive capability whatsoever, or does the will take over at that time?
Nope. Yeah, once you pass away, any power of attorney you've signed, whether it's financial, medical, they end. They're only effective while that person's alive. So once they pass away, you no longer have any authority. Whatever the governing instrument is at that time, whether it's their will and testacy laws, that's if someone doesn't have a will, or their trust. Those are what would govern.
And why don't you share at least one horror story with us in terms of one of the bigger, my goodness, I wish somebody hadn't done that stories?
Yeah. So, I mean, the biggest thing that I see horror stories is when someone doesn't do the proper planning in advance. And so as an attorney, I got to be rather vague with stories, but what I've seen before in the past is where clients will come in and meet with me, and we'll talk about all the various issues that they have and say, hey, you should really do this. This is what I recommend would be best for you. But then, unfortunately, they're either not ready to move forward, or for whatever reason they don't. And then something bad happens. They become incapacitated, or God forbid, they even passed away, and that's happened before. And so now they're family is trying to clean up this mess. And oftentimes, almost always actually, that involves going to court in some way or another. And I hate that for families. And so that's something I do see. I've seen it all the time with my clients who, again, some of them don't move forward, and just the unexpected. I always tell clients, the unexpected is right around the corner. You don't know what or when something's going to happen. And so take action now before it's too late.
Excellent. And how about a happy story?
Happy story. Thankfully, most of my clients end in happy stories. And again, the happy story is where a client comes to see me. We get their estate plan done. And or reading with me, we can see all these potential issues. Hey, your kids, they bicker, they fight all the time. You're a blended family. And step kids don't like step parents. And so they argue. And the happy story is when we can set up a plan that addresses situations like that. And then when the eventuality comes, and again, I've seen this before where you pass away, but you have all the documentation in place. Everything is as rock solid as it can be. And everything goes, again, in that situation, someone's passed away. There's always going to be some type of heartache, but make that process as smooth and as painless as it can possibly be, especially in one of those situations. And so those are the times that make me happy and give me a lot of fulfillment in my job, because as I said at the top, I try to keep families together, out of court, out of conflict. And when, that all pays off, that is what brings me fulfillment, and that is what makes me happy.
So hardly anybody wakes up one day and goes, gee willikers, I'm just dying to go call an attorney. So do attorneys make more money when someone dies without a will than they do with a will?
Yes, actually. So when you pass away, and you are died what we call intestate, meaning without a will, without any estate plan in place, the process is long, drawn out, and very expensive. And attorneys, I'll tell you, we don't like doing that type of work because oftentimes there's a lot of fighting. There's a lot of back and forth with courts, with clients, with other beneficiaries. And that it takes a lot of work. It's very difficult and takes a long time. And so it is incredibly expensive. It is significantly more expensive than drafting a will. So for example, there is so we do these monthly presentations, educational seminars. I think y'all both might have been to a couple.
Yeah,
but in that
gotten
part of
to.
that presentation, we have a slide where we say, look, this is an average value of a probate in Texas. Because again, we're licensed in Texas. And that can range anywhere from $20,000 or more, depending on the length, the fighting involved. And I do see, we've had a probate here recently that ended about that price range actually. And so getting a will, getting a trust done, it is expensive. Don't get me wrong, it's not cheap. It's a few $1,000s, $4,000, $5,000 or more, depending on your needs and complexity, desires, all that stuff. But it's a far cry from $10,000, $20,000 that you would be looking at otherwise.
Not to mention the drawn out process.
And it's the time and headache and heartache too. Yeah, absolutely.
Which is on top of losing the loved one that actually the situation came from.
Yeah, it just makes the whole situation worse when you don't have your own stuff together. And that's what I tell clients too. Estate planning is not about you. Now, of course, it involves you, right? Involves you and involves your things. But ultimately, it's about the loved ones you leave behind and ensuring that they're not left with a mess on their hands, but and a financial burden. And so that's what estate planning is really about. It's not about you. It's about your loved ones.
So how do you and your firm deal with people who really have control issues? That is, the person is the granddam or the dad of the group wants to reach out from the grave and control what happens even when they're not here anymore.
Yeah. So the people who are the patriarchs, matriarchs of the family, and they've controlled everything their entire lives, and they're used to that, and so they don't want to give up control. And thankfully, most of the time, when they're alive, they don't need to. Now, there are some advanced planning options that we might pursue for very high net worth individuals, and that does involve giving up control. But for the average person, you don't give up control during, right? So you retain full control. You can still have your fingers in all the pies. However, when you pass away, generally you do lose control. You can't say what happens afterwards. But with certain revocable trusts, we can create what we call lifetime asset protection trusts or other similar types of irrevocable trusts for your beneficiaries, your kids, whoever. And we can put rules in there. We can put restrictions. You can only use this, for health expenses, education expenses. And we can get super complicated with that, super detailed, or be very broad and vague, just depending on what the client wants. And I got to tell clients, this is your chance to assert your will from beyond the grave. And that's what that does. So for clients with concerns like that, who want to be able to control what happens with their stuff after they're gone, that's an option.
And what advice do you give people who are do-it-yourselfers that think they can just go to some online program and write their own estate?
I tell them that I do not recommend doing that right out of the gate, because I have seen, honestly, the worst probates, the worst fighting happens when someone tries to DIY an estate plan. They don't, because the estate plan requires certain formalities. Like for a will, for example, you need the original. It needs to be, signed in the presence of two witnesses and a notary. And if you don't do all that, or you don't do it correctly in the right order, then your will is no good. And now people are fighting. Yes, it's a valid will. No, it's not a valid will, depending on what that will says. And it can just make the whole experience that much worse. And again, same thing with other documents, like your trust, your powers of attorney. You try and execute them. You don't really understand all the legal language in them, so you don't understand what powers you're actually granting to these people or what your trust is actually saying going to happen. And so I don't recommend it for just your average person to try and DIY an estate plan, because again, they just don't have the knowledge or the experience to address all of these really complicated issues that go into creating these types of documents.
Not to mention the self-proving feature and the veracity of the witnesses not to have to find out. What was that guy's name again?
Yeah. Correct. Absolutely.
And since you're a second-generation attorney, how did you not escape being second-generation attorney?
Well, again, I tell clients I was drafted right out of high school. it was there was no escaping. So my mother, she's been an attorney doing estate plan work for almost 30 years now, and she took a break though when I was in middle school, high school to homeschool me. So she sold her firm and was able to homeschool me through high school. But then right when I was getting ready to graduate, she started back up again. So she started a new firm again, and of course she needed help, and of course I was right there. So I remember drafting documents for her on the dining room table on a laptop, and that's how we got started. And of course, as the years went by, that was in 2019, I think. And so 6-7 years later, we've of course grown a lot more, but I've just stuck with it because I like it.
Well, you do sound enthusiastic, and forgive me for that sarcastic question. Commonly, and JJ will tell you that he has the hardest job on earth working for his dad or with his dad.
Yeah. I don't know if it's the hardest job on earth working for my mom. Thankfully, we get along really well, and she trusts me to do my work without her constantly over my shoulder. Now, it wasn't always that way, right? She had to train me and everything. But JJ, I'm interested in your experience as well.
Yeah, definitely. It was particularly just at the beginning of understanding communication, of how to, when there were priorities of things, when things needed to be done, everything seemed like a priority. So then it was hard to figure out where to spend my time. So that was one of the biggest things, is once we learned to set dates on particular projects, one that I thought may have been urgent was really if you ever have time. And some things that were the opposite was like, oh, that's today. Great. Then I'll work on that today. So just learning what was the most important and what to accomplish. And the other part of that was not fearing make a mistake.
Yes.
So realizing things need to be edited in the future. Okay, great. But not using vapor lock to fill out one form or one application would take an afternoon instead of the length of time it should have taken. So that was definitely a lesson I learned as well.
And the other is kind of a 1 out of 10.
So I've had to learn to speed up, and he's had to learn to slow down.
I get that. To move fast, and I've had to learn how to slow down. So I understand that.
Well, you already described one of the biggest mistakes your clients make. What is something that people misunderstand about your profession?
So a lot of clients, unfortunately, attorneys in general have a bad reputation, deservedly so in a lot of cases. But thankfully, in my line of business, our job is to protect your family, keep them out of court, keep them out of conflict. We have this fiduciary obligation imposed on us by the state to only recommend things that we think would be productive for you. And so the kind of the snake oil salesman, money grubbing, lying attorney that a lot of people unfortunately have that idea of when they speak with an attorney, that's not really as true, certainly in the estate planning context, as it might be, in other areas of the law. Although even still, it's not attorneys, we have a bad reputation for communication and all these things. But honestly, we're not as bad as a lot of people say we are, thankfully, especially again, in my field. We love our clients. We do our best to serve our clients. And it's really what we do. We try and protect them, protect their assets, protect their families. And so that's what we do. And unfortunately, there's a bad reputation connotation that attorneys just have in general that we need to overcome as a profession, but also we just individually one-on-one with clients.
The only trouble I've ever had with an attorney, and thank God he has since retired, and I'm sorry for that attitude adjustment, but finishing up seemed to be a real challenge for him. And one of my lovely older clients called one day and was having a hissy fit. And I thought, this is kind of an out-of-body experience for this particular client. But she had waited so long that I had to call the attorney and say, we're fixing to have a come to Jesus meeting about this particular case. This needs to be done by Friday. So just get over your need to never finish anything up and your fear of making a mistake, and just let's get this deal done. And he was adroit enough to know, has she been giving you? I said, yes. As a matter of fact, I just got chewed out over this, and I hate getting chewed out, as JJ can tell you from hello. And we just need to get this done. So I'm telling everybody out in Cloudlandia that the biggest problem that attorneys have is they want to make sure everything is perfect. And we want to make sure everything is perfect. It's very difficult to ever finish up because only God is perfect and the rest of us are just doing our best to do a good job.
Yeah. Yeah, that is a reputation I've heard all the time as a transactional attorney is, attorneys are deal killers because they step in and they want to make sure every situation is addressed dot every I, cross every T. And again, I fall into that a little bit myself because that's what my job requires. My job requires me to look out for the best interests of my client. But sometimes that the best interests of my client are to get the deal done, to get the paperwork signed and completed. And some of these more far-flung scenarios, we don't need to actually address or talk about. And so that's, thankfully, one of the things that I've been able to overcome a lot is with working fast, but at the same time, making sure all the necessary and appropriate things are included in the documents or the contract or whatever I'm preparing.
Personally, my worst story on estate planning, just before JJ came on to help out and actually flourish in other areas, I had a chef on his way to his will signing ceremony collide with a telephone pole and get killed instantly on his way to the will signing ceremony. And I thought, you just can't make stuff like that up. But lucky he'd only been married once, had one wife, had 2 children, and it just flowed just fine. But the point of all that is, so if somebody has already prepared a will but forgot to sign it or hadn't gotten around to signing, is that effective at all, Nicholas?
So unfortunately, in Texas, an estate plan in progress is not an estate plan. So until you sign on the dotted line, if something happens to you in the meantime, it's not going to do you any good.
It's just a figment of your imagination. It's just a figment of your imagination. And JJ, why don't you quickly tell the story about how we talked to somebody who was worth several $1 million who should go nameless, and we introduced them to the concept of, in fact, I'm going to have Nicholas go ahead and answer that question. What's a holographic will?
Yeah, holographic will. This is one of the things I see all the time when clients try and DIY an estate plan. So a holographic will, it's not recognized in every state, but in Texas, it is recognized. And so really what it is, it's a handwritten will. It has to be entirely in your own handwriting and signed. And so that's what it is. And so I see clients sometimes mess that up in one way or another. They use, a template and then will write in certain provisions and they think and sign it. And I think that's good enough. But no, it has to be entirely in your own handwriting. And so that is what a holographic will is.
We'll communicate that to clients who I'll call it, say, being stubborn about getting an estate plan in place. And we'll just say, this is a Band-Aid. That's all it is. It's a temporary Band-Aid. If something happens to you today, this is legally enforceable in Texas. We still need to connect you with an attorney to actually properly really diagram out your estate and what you want it to do. This, once again, we'll say it numerous times, is a Band-Aid for your situation.
Yeah, because when a client handwrites his entire will, your hand starts cramping, you get tired, something distracts you. You don't, and then you also don't have the legal knowledge to address certain contingencies that are very likely to occur. And so you don't include everything as you should. It's not a comprehensive document. So as you said, in the short term, if you don't have anything else, go ahead and write it down. But come in as soon as you can to an attorney and get a proper document, an estate plan created for you.
Describe for us your ideal client, Nicholas.
So as I said, everyone needs an estate plan. Everyone. And so if you do, my ideal client obviously is if you don't have one, come see me and come get something done. Whether or it doesn't even have to be me, any other estate planning attorney, right? Come get whatever you need for your situation done. And a lot of my clients are small business owners because they have needs that your regular ordinary person who's not a business owner doesn't have. And so that's a lot of my clientele because they have business partners and these more complex and ongoing relationships that need to be also addressed in their estate plan. So really, again, anyone that has an estate plan, it might be outdated as well. So if it's 5 years or maybe even older than that, or some big life event has happened in between the last time you got your estate plan done, come and see an estate planning attorney, me or someone else, to update that for you or see if it needs to be updated.
So about how often does an estate plan need to be reviewed and perhaps even revised, in your opinion, Nicholas?
Yeah, so we recommend clients review their estate plan with an attorney at least once every 3 years. If not, every single year, especially for our small business owner clients. So their life moves and changes so fast. We highly recommend you have routine at these annual meetings with an attorney to make sure that your plan stays updated with your life and with the law. But at a minimum, once every 3 years.
And for blended families, do you have any recommended template that you follow to kind of cut down on the bickering in advance?
That really depends. Unfortunately, there's no template, one size fits all. Some attorneys might try and, if you want to save money, might try and, force you into a cookie cutter kind of solution. But cookie cutter solutions don't work for everyone. They might work for, a lot of people. But at our firm, what we do is we sit down with you, meet with you for up to a couple hours to really hash out what would work for you. And that's before we even start designing, like putting the documents together. But we'll meet with our clients and talk with them and say, hey, this is your situation. These are the actual relationships between these people. Here are some potential solutions. And so what I explain to clients is when I meet with them, you know your current situation, you know where you are, what assets you have, and you know where you want to be. You know, as you said, your desire, where your goal, what you want to accomplish. I know the in-between. I know the tools, I know the law, I know how we can get there. I just need to know where you're at, where you want to be, and I will help you fill in the middle.
That's a great parallel of what we do as certified financial planners is we figure out where you are today, that whole find where you are on the map. This is where you are personally, relationally, financially. What is the lifestyle you want to continue living or work towards in the future? And then setting the course from here to there. So that's exactly what we do. How have you seen a partnership with advisors in your practice? Like how do those hand in glove fit together?
Yeah, so I love working with financial planners. Financial planners, CPAs are tied into a lot of our client meetings because for our small business owners, obviously their right hand is their CPA, right? And so they meet with their CPA all the time. And so we want to make sure we work with them. So anything we do with the business, there's no adverse income tax consequences, or at least the CPA knows what's going on so they can plan accordingly. With financial planners, on the other hand, again, when we're moving assets around and updating, beneficiaries and things with the trust or otherwise, we want to tie in with the financial planner because the financial planner has access to all their accounts and can easily do that for them, right? Or if we're moving an account into an LLC or something like that, the financial planner can make that process significantly faster and easier. And so we love working with financial planners, CPAs, life insurance agents, all these ancillary advisors to the client to help just bring in a comprehensive, make their estate plan that is comprehensive in nature actually work in practice.
And do you personally have a will in place for you and your family?
Yes, I do. You often hear the cobbler's kids have no shoes. And unfortunately, that is true for a lot of estate planning attorneys. Actually, a lot of them don't have their own documents together, or at the very least, many times they're way outdated. And that's just because we do this day in and day out. And so but I sat down one day and I said, okay, I'm going to get this done. And so I did create my own trust, will, powers of attorney, all that kind of stuff. So thankfully, I am taken care of in that regard.
Congratulations on being the cobbler with properly done shoes.
So, Nicholas, what is the best compliment you've ever received?
Ooh, the best compliment I ever received. Well, back in high school, no, I'm just kidding.
Yeah, that was good.
One of my favorite compliments I get from clients are just the thank yous that I get for when we put their plan together and just giving them peace of mind. That is my favorite because, they're worried about what's going to happen. Is there going to be fighting? Is what I want going to actually happen? And when we get through with designing and drafting the documents and then signing the documents and then funding the trust, if that's what they have. And with the trust, you need to move your assets inside of it. That's called funding. Otherwise, your trust doesn't work for you. And so once we get through all of these things, the client's peace of mind and then the thank yous I get for doing that and helping that with them, especially in a complex or dynamic family situation like those blended families, that can often be a huge sigh of relief once everything is completed. And so that is what I really like to see.
And what is the best advice you've ever received?
Best advice I ever received. So let me see. One of the two things I'll give you two pieces that I have. The fear of the Lord is the beginning of wisdom. That to me has been an incredible piece of advice. It's not as intuitive, but once you start to learn a bit, you really see how that is true. And then the other piece of advice that I get: never stop learning. Never stop learning. That's something I learned getting out of high school, moving into college, and you think, and then getting out of college, getting into law school, and then finishing law school. Once you're done with your regular education, your formal education, your schooling, that's not when your learning should stop. You've still got so much more to learn about, to grow, right? I mean, and as attorneys, we have CLE, so we have to do, education credits through the year. But even beyond that, I mean, just learning about, history, politics, science, all of these different things that are so much into the world that you just don't know about. And that's one of the things I like, about meeting clients is I'll talk with them about their personal lives, their jobs, and it gives me an insight to all these different areas of life and different areas of the workforce that I had no idea about because my clients come from every type of different background you can imagine. And so just learning it in and of itself, keep doing that. Don't let the end of your formal education in high school, college, or wherever you stopped be the end. Keep learning, keep reading books, listening to podcasts, doing whatever you can to imbibe more information because there's so much into the world that you just don't know about until you do.
John is a great example of that, to continue learning with multiple degrees in addition to the CPA and Certified Financial Planner. And 23 years post-college is when I began my journey towards being a certified financial planner as well.
Mm-hmm.
So that's continuing wanted to learn and grow in expertise in my industry and to be able to continue to serve clients at a higher level. So definitely an importance to continue.
We suggest that people always be curious. Because if you're always curious, it's like being a little kid perpetually throughout your lifetime. And also suggest that when you get a degree or two, you suddenly now are kind of equipped to do some more research. You find out what the heck is really going on around you. My first degree is in economics, which basically qualified me to go to school so I could teach you how to be an unemployed economist. And then again, that's what it's like back in olden days. And I got a second degree as an accountant. And suddenly I became interesting once I was a certified public accountant. Mm-hmm. And the nice thing about doing research is that you get to encounter some amazing people just like yourself who actually have expertise that are totally unqualified to even comment on, other than saying, you need to find somebody that's a good personality match that you'll trust enough to actually tell them your story and somehow magically avoid jargon. So how do you make sure that people understand what the heck it is you're telling them, Nicholas?
Yeah. So when we meet with clients, we try and avoid as much of the jargon as possible because clients, when you start using words like, per stirpes and other types of Latin phrases like that attorneys are so fond of, clients, their brains just check out and they don't know what you're saying. They don't pay attention and they don't take action. If you don't understand, a confused mind doesn't act. And so unfortunately, then, they don't get their estate plan done. And so that's something we try to avoid when talking with clients. Now, if it's necessary to put in like it's one of those like per stirpes, using that as an example, that's a word pretty much that you'll see very, very commonly in estate planning documents, and so it's got to be used. And so when we mention that, we explain to them what that is. Per stirpes, it's Latin for by the branch. It means if one of your kids passes away, his share goes to his kids equally if he had any, right? And so anytime you need to use some type of jargon or those types of phrases, you explain it to them. Say, hey, this is what it means. This is what I'm talking about. Of course, answer questions.
So go ahead and define what actually does mean by the branch as opposed to per capita.
Okay. So per capita. So per capita is by the head, I believe. It's again another Latin phrase. And so the big difference, and again, there's little differences across states, right? But the idea with per stirpes is, again, everything's equally between your kids. One kid passes away, his share goes to equally between his kids, your grandchildren. Per capita, on the other hand, is a little different. So same idea, everything is equally between, your kids, but let's say one of the kids passes away, that his share doesn't go to his kids anymore, your grandkids. It goes equally between the surviving children. And so these Latin phrases that are used can make a big difference in how your estate is distributed if something happens, like, again, God forbid, one of your kids dying. And I unfortunately do see that happen.
I've had two of those happen. And the nice thing about kids that are not going to live a long time, they normally give you hints when they're very, very young. So you can realize that, love you to death, darling, but you're probably not, based on your habits, unless you change your whole demeanor, you're not going to be here very long. I had two daughters along those lines. One got to live till she was 6 and the other got to live till she was about 42. So the per stirpes and per capita is not just idle chat from my point of view.
No, it is an incredibly important decision. I talk with clients about that eventuality when you're drafting your estate plan. Do you want, if one of your kids pass away, do you want their share to go to their kids or to the remainder of your kids? And clients differ on what they want to happen, especially depending on the relationships involved, the ages of kids, financial status. So, that's a really big decision.
The expression that we like to use is, tell me about the snakes in the basket, in terms of every family, if you have more than a couple of children, has a child or two they love to talk about. And then there's that other
Yes.
child. So how do you handle that situation, Nicholas?
Yeah. So the when I meet with clients, often, as you said, oftentimes there's that the black sheep, the estranged child, whatever it is, and you just need to talk to them about what's the extent of that relationship, what's going on, why is that relationship strained, and you try and glean information without being too intrusive, and you got to pay attention to the client and how they're reacting to your questions, and just kind of based on the information they're giving you, your legal knowledge and experience with past clients and other just personal human relationships. When we start designing their plan, and if they have this estranged kid who hates them and they want to make them successor trustee, you got to push back on the client a little bit and say, hey, why don't we think about this? She doesn't, this client, this child doesn't like you. She doesn't want anything to do with you. Why would you make her there? And so sometimes clients will make decisions like that, and you just got to kind of keep them on track, but kind of recap, the things they told you and say, hey, is this really something you want to do?
Besides your mom and your continuing education with the legal profession, do you have any outside studies that you do that you found helpful in terms of relating to clients?
So let's see. I had my insurance license for a couple of years, and getting that was actually incredibly helpful to be able to kind of bring in that knowledge to when I met with clients, being able to see, hey, you don't have any life insurance. I see some red flags. You have minor kids, a mortgage, that you might want to get some life insurance, especially if there's only one breadwinner, right? Or a primary breadwinner, right? That is probably a really big help that I've seen, just to give one extra little piece of knowledge to clients or advice to clients that I can. The other thing that I will say is just having a life experience, whether that, just doing different things. You get to relate to clients that you didn't think you would be able to, because maybe you've done the same thing. Oh, we both played, football. Oh, we both ridden horses or rode bulls before. And so it gives you that connection with clients that you didn't think there would be. And it kind of helps you being able to break down that initial barrier, because they're coming into an attorney's office and they might be nervous about it. They're planning, for their death. And so it's kind of a nervous kind of situation for a lot of clients. And so I like to try and relate to them. So just having that life experiences, different things, so I can relate to them and kind of warm up to them so that they're able to trust me and talk with me about their intimate personal lives, their relationships with their spouses, their kids, your assets, their income, all that stuff that normally you don't talk about. They're having to tell me. And so just having that experience is makes it incredibly helpful.
Are you blessed with any hobbies?
Yes, I am. I have a diverse set of hobbies, as I alluded to. Anything from martial arts. I've just started learning the violin, actually, so that's one new one that I'm trying to pick up. We'll see how that goes. Again, I used to ride bulls quite a bit. Then ride horses too. All that. Let's see what else. I love to read, go to the gym. A bunch of different things that I like to do in my free time. Used to play a lot of video games when I was younger, not so much anymore. I just don't have the time for it. But still, and that's one of the things that I meet with clients, and they say, hey, this is my favorite game. Like, oh my gosh, I played that too. So those are the types of things that I really like to talk with clients about.
JJ, actually, two of JJ's children are studying martial arts. Which martial art are you studying?
Yeah. So I'm in Muay Thai. So that's basically, for those who don't know, kickboxing, but you can use your elbows and knees. And then Jiu-Jitsu, which is, most people know, it's a bit similar to wrestling.
Yeah, 2 of my kids are in Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu. So yes,
It's
I'm
a lot of fun.
very familiar.
It's a lot of
I
fun.
tried it for a minute. It wasn't quite my thing, but I enjoy rock climbing and other activities.
And that's a very good point, JJ. There's some things that your children like to do, and you don't necessarily ascribe to that same situation. I used to drag my kids to taekwondo practice, and it happened to be run by a former national champion of South Korea.
Wow.
And he was an amazing teacher, and he went on to actually coach the Olympic team for the United States also. But I was literally dragging them in there. And I thought, I do not recall my parents ever dragging me to baseball practice. Okay. So if you don't really want to go, it's not going to disappoint me. It's just fine. It's just something I always wanted to do. And unfortunately for me, I got to go do that for a period of time. And I did pick up learning music at 67. I took piano lessons.
Wow.
So to try and learn at 67 is a major uphill battle. And unfortunately, I found a delightfully patient and persistent person. So I encourage you to learn the violin. My oldest child played the violin for a period of time. I remember buying her a violin, and she did her best to do that for a period of time, and then just went on to other studies in terms of that. So I encourage people to have diverse points of view and diverse interests, so you broaden your universe, you understand different people's point of view. So congratulations on doing that.
Well, thank you. And I totally agree. Totally agree.
So you think your mom will ever retire?
Yes, we've had that discussion. So she would like to retire in the next decade or so and have me be her retirement plan. That's the
The decade or so was fun because when John and I first started working together, it was a 3 to 7 year window, and that was 14 years ago. And now the window is never. So it'll be interesting to see how that develops within your own practice.
Yes, I don't think she'll ever totally hang up the gloves, so to speak. She might step back, but she loves her job, so she'll always probably do something.
And are you blessed with a family beyond your mom?
So I'm engaged, looking to get married at the end of the year, and then we're hoping to have kids as soon as we can after that.
Congratulations
by the
on
way,
making that decision, because the world needs more good, educated children with loving parents.
I'm right there with you. I agree.
And JJ has 3, and I had 3 as well. And now I've got 5 grandchildren. And the nice thing about grandchildren is they reteach you all kinds of lessons that you might have forgotten for a brief period. And in our household, we're lucky enough to have an atrium in the middle of our house. So you can actually do a lap inside our house.
Really?
We used to play Pop Chases the Kids until we sadly tipped over one of the statues.
That's pretty funny. From the outside perspective, that's pretty funny.
I remember the tricycle going around and around in the house as well. Obviously, a number of years ago now, but the fun memories as you talk about experiences and being able to relate to others. When I see little ones and the adventures that the families are going through, I'm like, I fully understand. I'm now in the teenage stage, which is going well with 14, 16, and 18-year-olds, and navigating what does that look like as far as their more freedom, more responsibility, and the maturing. So it's a lot of fun to be part of the journey.
And JJ, what advice do your kids give to you about desserts?
Give to me. They remind me that I don't eat the same way I do now as I did then. So an example of that. So yesterday we had a family over, the teenagers as well. So the kids were all enjoying time together. The adults sitting around the dining table after we had finished eating, and I made some chocolate chip cookies. And I was still very full from dinner because we had just eaten. So by the end of the night, I literally had 1 cookie. And I saw my son before I went to bed, and he went to grab another one. I started to stop him, and I'm like, whatever, go ahead. Because, I mean, he's 14, and it really doesn't matter. We eat healthy overall, but it really doesn't matter. And for me, I much rather feel better, and eating 1 in that case last night was better for how I'd feel.
Yeah, I'm already suffering from that. I definitely do not eat the large volume of frozen pizzas and ice cream and cookies that I ate even 5 years ago. So I eat a lot healthier now, which is good. It gives me more energy, it makes me feel better. But it's just an interesting thing to see.
Yeah, there are ages, stages, and phases. And if you've been blessed with the desire to have good health throughout your lifetime and could afford to have good health, it saves a lot of trips to the doctor's office. I'll just put it that way in my late 70s. So it is possible to be healthy, wealthy, and wise. And that's what we try and help our clients continue to strive for and enjoy, because literally you can have fun and still have. I highly recommend that everybody get their estate plan in place sooner rather than later, particularly in terms of health directives, because every time you go to a healthcare facility, one of the first questions they ask is, do you have a directive?
Correct.
And not having one can be a real problem.
Can be. It definitely can, especially if people are fighting about what decision needs to be made. Right. The only place you can go from there if you don't agree is court. Right. And no one wants that.
So what final note, Nicholas, would you make for those who are listening?
So the the big thing I always want to tell clients is estate planning is not about you. I said this before in the podcast, but it's about the loved ones you leave behind. That is, if I can convey one thing across through this podcast, that would be the one thing. The other thing I like to say though is, when your time comes, right, and you pass away, your kids will, obviously love all the money you leave them, right? It's great, but that's not how they're going to remember you. Or at least that's not how you want them to remember you. You don't want them to just remember you. Oh yeah, when Dad kicked the bucket, he left me $1 million. Thanks, Dad. No, you want them to remember you by all the life experiences, by the the values and things that he's taught you over the years, the time you spent together. And I always tell clients that what I mean by that is leave your legacy. Don't just leave your money, right? Leave all these other intangible things behind you with your family that they can remember you and say, yes, he was a great man. He was a great father because of all these other reasons, not just because he left me a sizable inheritance.
That's great advice.
It works the same. I've heard this said is the husbands will lay down their lives for their wife. And so when I've heard it said, will you live for them? So a similar kind of thing for the parents to their kids is not only will you die for them, but actually how are you living and leaving a legacy for them as well?
Yes, and there's a problem I see all the time. Parents or whatever are so focused on making the money, leaving the inheritance for their kids, right, that they don't spend the time with their kids. They don't make sure those relationships are kept intact, and I find that so sad when clients are like, yes, I have all this money, I'm going to leave it to all my kids. And I meet with them I'm pretty much estranged from all my kids and we don't have the greatest relationships. And I find that just heartbreaking because they haven't invested, they haven't left their legacy. And that's something I hope and also I'd like to convey to everyone watching. Leave your legacy.
So if you're blessed with children, get to know your children, have a relationship with your children, and communicate with them on a regular basis.
Great. Great.
Well, thank you for this time, Nicholas. Today, we'll definitely drop your information in the description. Thank you for those who watched this. Go ahead and like and subscribe to be able to hear more from Checky Financial, and you'll have a great day.
Thank you.